Mine's working. Is mine working?
Worked in rehearsal.
You putting it through the speakers?
Evening. I'd like to call tonight's meeting, planning board, to order. And let's start with Pledge of Allegiance. Please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is approval of the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to make an adjustment or an addition to the agenda tonight? If not, the chair would entertain a motion.
Second.
That's been approved by Mr. Cole and seconded by Mr. Foster. Not all in favor?
No.
Aye. Next, approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any questions? Does anyone have anything they would like to? Or chair would entertain a motion. Oliver, Mr. Cole, second. All in favor? All right. Is there any public comment? We always enjoy having input. It's this is a honor and privilege for us to be up here, but we also look forward to would appreciate hearing from people what they think, what we can do to help with their concerns. All right, absence of public comment. We'll move to old business. Continued lighting ordinance discussion. Been a month, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to look through the packet from last month and the updated packet.
Yeah, I'll just walk you through what you have in your packet tonight. So good evening, everyone. So following up on our discussion last time about adopting a dark sky outdoor lighting ordinance for Mills River. So based upon the feedback I got from the planning board members last time, I put together a rough draft of a Mills River ordinance that addressed some of the items the board brought up, and I'm just going to go through that really briefly. That's the only attachment in your packet tonight. We can still reference some of the example ordinances that we went through at the last meeting. But I think due to the number of them and all the paper, we just ask that you have those digitally or bring them with you. So just like we did for traffic impact analysis, I nested this below the general regulations section of the zoning ordinance. So this would be new section 154.117. I just called it lighting standards. Again, subject to change or input. So again, incorporating some of what we saw in the other ordinances, we have the purpose, controlling light pollution, spillage, glare, light trespass, so as not to affect motorists, pedestrians, and land uses of adjacent properties. And again, the main goals of the ordinance being to minimize adverse offsite impacts of lighting, such as light trespass and obtrusive light, curtail light pollution, reduce sky glow, and preserve the dark sky night environment. Help protect the natural environment from the adverse effects of artificial lighting at night, and conserve energy associated with artificial lighting to the greatest extent possible. Moving on to section B is the applicability. And again, if I miss something here with what the board wanted, please just jump in. So the applicability of this ordinance for Mills River, again, in this draft form, is that all non-residential uses would be subject to these standards. And I elaborate by basically saying all new uses and new developments requiring a zoning compliance permit when new light fixtures will be installed. Number two brings in multifamily residential uses being subject to these standards. Number three I heard consensus on major subdivisions. I took a little leeway and threw in minor subdivisions when they propose a new roadway network, but again, that's up for discussion. So again, any major or minor subdivision that includes construction of new roadways with road lighting is subject to these standards. And again, this is an item still up for discussion, but based on what I heard last time. Number 4 is greenhouses constructed after the effective date of this ordinance shall incorporate screening on or within the greenhouse structure to minimize light trespass onto neighboring properties or light pollution directed upward into the night sky. And then number 5 is all new exterior light fixtures and site lighting installed after the effective date of this ordinance or section within the town's jurisdiction shall comply unless exempted somewhere else in this section. So the standards, again, that I heard there was consensus on last meeting is that all new wall pack lights, and again, those are the square boxes that just shoot straight out. All new wall pack lights shall be full cutoff, meaning there's no light going above the 90-degree plane and shielded. So again, lights being directed down at the site and is not just spelling out everywhere. New floodlights on non-residential properties shall be full cutoff and shielded, same concept, to prevent uplight and to prevent front, side, and rear light trespass onto surrounding properties. New site area lighting shall be full cutoff and shielded, applicable in both non-residential developments and major and minor residential subdivisions with roadways. So again, street lighting. And again, we say here, again, roadway lighting is full cutoff and shielded. Pedestrian lighting along sidewalks, trails, greenways shall be cutoff fixtures. That was a standard, I think, in 2 of the ordinances. I believe it's cutoff versus full cutoff, because usually pedestrian lighting is at a lower height. And then sign lighting was another thing addressed. So sign lighting shall be shielded so that light is not unnecessarily directed towards motorists and pedestrians. Sign lighting shall not consist of uplighting or spotlights on the ground directed upward, which will unnecessarily contribute to light pollution. So those are the fixture standards. And then we get to the actual site lighting standards. So the consensus, again, I heard last time was that the maximum light level at any property line is going to be 1 foot candle. And then this was one I added in that was in, I think, 2 of the example ordinances. And again, this is up for discussion, but they talked about, so in the zoning code, we have stream buffers. So there's a 30-foot buffer from each side of a stream where there's no development allowed. And actually, if you go into a watershed district and you do a high density development, that turns into 100 feet. In 2 of the example ordinances, they basically said, you know, lighting in a stream buffer affects the environment and, you know, fish and creatures that may be in the stream. And so what I wrote here was maximum light level using maintained lumens shall be no more than 0.25 foot candles. I think Hendersonville's ordinance had it at 0. I thought that was relatively strict. So I went to a 1/4 foot candle for any land use at ground level adjacent to a stream buffer, etc. And again, no light fixtures installed within the stream buffer, which is basically the same prohibition as our zoning code. No development within 30 feet of a surface water body. Number 3, and again, I'm on line 49 if you're following along, is about the lighting plan. So we're going to require a lighting plan be submitted for all new site and area lighting with ISOLux drawings or photometric drawings, which again show how light basically is downcast onto the ground and the intensity of that light as you get away from the fixture. So if you think of like a street pole above you, the brightest light's going to be directly under it. And then as you go out in concentric circles, that light is going to be less intense. But based on the bulb and the fixture, it'll show the intensity of the light and how far it's basically broadcast onto the ground. And that's important, especially if we're looking at having the 1 foot candle limitation at a property boundary. Lighting level and placement shall be designed, you know, per the Illuminating Engineer Society. And then lighting plans not required to take into account light sources external to the site. So again, we're only talking about applicants or property owners controlling light on their site specifically. And then getting into exempt lighting, again, we covered most of these. So flagpole lighting is exempt, sport and recreational facility lighting of a temporary duration, temporary construction lighting, emergency lighting, low voltage landscape lighting, holiday seasonal lighting, etc. Community events. And then, one thing we talked about was that, Hendersonville's ordinance, I think in one of its first iterations, was going to have what's called an amortization clause requiring everyone to comply within a certain period of time. And what I heard was that the board didn't want to do that, but we wanted to have some provision that if someone's replacing 50% of the lights on their site, everything has to be brought into compliance. So that's section F, existing non-conforming lighting and required replacement. And basically, I'll just summarize it is that if you're replacing 50% or more of total lights on a site in a 1-year period, everything needs to be brought into compliance with the light fixtures. I also said that if you're expanding or improving your site by 50%, so as an example, let's say the Circle K wanted to double in size, because their site is doubling by 50%, their whole site would then need to be compliant with the lighting ordinance. And then a parking lot as well. So Ingalls, let's say instead of putting the car wash in, they needed more parking. That's a bad example because it's not 50%. But if a business were to basically double the size of their parking lot, then the parking lot lighting specifically would have to come into compliance. So again, more detailed, but sticking to the 50% number. And then the last thing I think we talked about was what's prohibited, especially being near the airport. So prohibited lighting, section G, line 88, includes searchlights, laser lights, any other similar high intensity light, especially those directed upward, again, being sensitive of air traffic. Any lighting or light fixture oriented upward in general, lighting that can be confused for a traffic control device, and flickering, strobing, pulsing, rotating, or flashing lights, especially those that may interfere with motorists, pedestrians, and aircraft. And then there's a little bit more in the administration and enforcement section about the details that are required in a lighting plan and how light will be measured. But that's about as far as I got with the rough draft based on what I heard in the last meeting. As we move forward, there will be other sections of the ordinance that we'll need to incorporate this in, and it'll all be part of the same text amendment. But again, if the board wants to do major and minor subdivisions, I'm probably gonna need to put a couple sentences in the subdivision code, to point back to this section, just like we did for the traffic study ordinance. But that's the summary of the rough draft I have for you tonight. Happy to take questions, and I do have all the example ordinances that I can still pull up if we want to discuss those. Thank you.
It's great news so far. I do have a silly question about stream buffers. For instance, if a greenway is being built next to the river, can the greenway be built inside the stream buffer?
Yes.
Okay, so then if it's lit,
Yeah. And
would we need to put an exception for a greenway so that, but then make sure that the lighting is specific to the greenway itself? It doesn't.
yeah, probably. I think we could probably put an exception for the stream buffer. I mean, just referencing trails, greenways, or just recreational, passive recreational facilities, if you want to call it that.
I know we have Kirby back here, but we have back parking lot there. That's Kirby.
I believe so. They're the solar panel lights. I've never driven back there that late at night, but yes, but that would be,
Out this, if they're gonna use that shed or buffer, whichever,
Mhm.
that green space of water, they're going to systems. Back here.
Why would we want the lights to be any different though on these walkways?
No, what he was saying is, to suggest was the starting point of the conversation, he wasn't saying make it different. He was saying don't allow that buffer, no watershed. if I understood it correctly. Code is gonna require, like,
Yeah. Yeah, but it should come up to what we're talking about here.
Sorry.
But the lighting that you put there should be downward, not.
so you're suggesting the same thing I think I'm suggesting.
Yes.
We should allow lights in that area if there are community trails or development trails.
I agree.
I think is, as much as possible, confine the light to the area of
Yeah,
the Greenway
Exactly.
and not have it spill out too much.
The walking path. So
Now, I will put that in. I think if for some reason it didn't get put in, I think we would still have a way out, because, well, again, this would be more, I guess, of the town greenway project, but lights erected by a government or public entity in performance of an essential public service are exempt, but that would not include like a subdivision path. So I think that's a good addition.
as a reminder, what's the cutoff for major and minor subdivision?
10. So up to 10 is a minor subdivision, 11 or more is major.
Just clarify what you were saying there. If they're doing a minor, but some existing road, you're not gonna require that kind of piece of.
Correct.
Suggest, but if they're cutting into an old hayfield and making inferior roads, private or otherwise.
Yeah, and the example last time, and this is what I was thinking of, was it's now named Wintercrest. It's across from the Roper Farm subdivision on Banner Farm Road that Moore and Sons is building. So the Wintercrest subdivision. Yeah, it was 8 lots, but they're new streets, and I believe there's light fixtures there. Now again, I think as the chairman said at the last meeting, most of those being installed are Duke Energy fixtures, and most of them are full cutoff, but we should be consistent.
Just for the sake of comment, I'm, always want to make sure we discuss all this stuff and don't come back to haunt us. When we say all non-residential uses shall be subject to these standards. I'm not saying make somebody go that's already in a subdivision, put in the new type lightings, but I will assume that if we approve a new subdivision, we're going to require the new type lighting.
At least on the streets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, why? I just think, I'm just thinking. Most complaints to me, I think, come from neighbors with some light up here shining in the window. Why can't we require normal
The
residential
single family home component.
family home? Yeah.
And I didn't put that in because I think that was something that was still
I'm
being
just commenting.
discussed.
Maybe do we want to consider it? Like I say, I want to make sure we discuss it all.
Not to take an easy route, but the typical conversation. Right, existing single family homes. Highly contested conversations.
Well, my
See
next,
some low-hanging fruit here, that might-
my next comment was on greenhouses, and I assume that existing greenhouses come under the agricultural exemption. That, we
So-
don't really control much agricultural. We let them. You do what it takes to make it work, and
We excluded existing.
we're excluding existing, but these greenhouses, new greenhouses, are they going to be required or excluded or exempt?
And this again was something that I think was still going to be discussed, and I just put in greenhouses constructed after the effective date of the ordinance, because it seemed like the board had an interest in including them, but not making old greenhouses have to do a retrofit. Now, with what you brought up, Mr. Foster, with the ag exemption, if you subject greenhouses to this lighting ordinance, we will need to modify the ag exemption for the town to basically reference this.
Well, that's basically what I'm saying.
Okay.
is They are exempt, they're agricultural exempt now existing. Why wouldn't a new one be also exempt?
Correct, unless we modify, I can't remember the section, but the
But
two
we're
sentences of our
saying
code
here,
that has a full.
greenhouse construction after the effective date of this ordinance shall incorporate screening on or within the greenhouses. It looks like we'll say we're requiring it when they're already exempt under the ag exemption.
You're right. It conflicts right now because it's an item up for discussion
Well,
still.
that's the reason I'm discussing it.
Well, I'm just clarifying. So
Yeah.
there,
Clearly, there's a suggestion because we asked to talk about it. I think it's a very lengthy conversation that I need a whole week. James has an opinion. This is not a short. I was. That's up to 99% of the stuff.
Yeah.
and what I guess what I was trying to do is let me just lay that out. There's whether you want new greenhouses to have this applicable to them. And there's also whether you want the 50% provision, you know, if a greenhouse expands by 50% or if they replace their lighting, if they would have,
Way over 50%.
well, exactly. But that's another component. And then for any of this to be applicable, you know, I can write greenhouses here, but as long as the agricultural exemption at the very beginning of our zoning code exists, it doesn't matter if I write greenhouses, it will not apply. So we will, if you wanted this applicable to greenhouses in any form, this text amendment would have to include an amendment to the town's agricultural exemption, basically saying all agricultural uses are exempt except greenhouses are subject to this.
Are we allowed to?
We'd love to have,
I'll make a motion on that, but
we would love to have your thoughts.
please do.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know if everyone here knows your. I don't know if everyone here knows your income revenue. They might. Thanks for allowing.
Of course.
Coincidence,
No,
he's here or not. I don't know.
Well, good.
Daniel told me to come the last meeting. I'm James Cantrell. I live at 1578 Jeffers Road in Mills River. I also own the greenhouse adjacent to the park at 4055 Haywood Road. I recently acquired it from my father. My first question would be, you're saying 50%, the greenhouse has to be 50% bigger. So for instance, Trihistal did double, they went from 2 acres to 4, but they did not add any new lights. So they have to retrofit their lit area because they increased their space.
Only if only if the board decides to make that provision applicable. As it's written now, it would only be newly constructed greenhouses.
James, at last meeting, to clarify, we just said we'd like to talk about it. We did. Michael, this is our starting point of this bucket.
Yeah,
Whole conversation.
no, I understand, because I asked, because I know Lakeside is a contested thing, even though that's not in the town, but they have all the side and top coverings. They just didn't use it right. I know Ohala has it. They're in a warranty battle over, because it broke like 2 weeks in.
They retro.
Correct. You're talking like $4 a square foot was the quote I got the other day.
Question I was gonna ask you, if it's okay to ask this, council. Instead of us going down. Be nice if they would talk at a higher level. This is even something they won't put. You think that would be the order of this conversation to have?
Yeah, I'm gonna refer to Michael. I mean,
Asking the council their thoughts on this, if they even like us to go down. I'm kind of a big one.
Well, I think maybe one way we could do that is if we leave it out of the first time, and thank you for putting it in as a discussion item. It is something we definitely need to discuss, and it's more of a discussion than just tonight. Question is, do we feel the need to hurry up and get this approved in a form and then handle the greenhouse lighting separately? Or do we wait and set it up just one time? If we set it as without the greenhouse lighting, and it's council's pleasure to add that or ask the question, is that something to be considered, then we come back and consider that. That might be one way to do it. Or council could remove it.
Included, it has to have direct to cancel fee.
But it's certainly,
We have to have that conversation.
yeah, and it's certainly not the intent of the planning board to put undue burdens on it.
Another, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Another option would be, like for conditional zoning, you as the planning board chair, I think, went to that meeting and offered some feedback or input from the planning board's perspective. So another more informal way to do it would be if you wanted to go to a council meeting and be put on the agenda as a discussion item to get feedback.
That's the way I should work.
That, I think that would be acceptable, because again, it's you as the chair of the planning board approaching council saying, hey, we consider this. We're not quite sure where you would fall. Can we just talk about this?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we should be presenting what if situations to the council. We present a recommendation and then they can send it back, change it if they want.
But I think it's also valuable to have input. I mean, yes, we are an independent board, but to know council's pleasure, sometimes there's another side of this we may not see that. So I can see it both ways. It's almost a vague and useless answer. It's my Air Force training kicking in. But we can only make recommendations.
So I don't think there's a hurry, was your question, is there a hurry? I don't think there's a rush to do this by Christmas. What if we addressed everything except for greenhouses? I'm telling you, greenhouse conversation.
And I interpret that greenhouses basically are under ag exemption anyway.
Product,
But it-
but again, that can be changed.
But it
Well, I
is a
know, but
concern.
I don't want to change it.
Council may have some concerns about that, is that dark sky is dark sky. But then again, like I say, it's not our intention to place an undue burden. And if, I would ask Mr. Cantrell again, or $4 a square foot additional. So if you're building a new greenhouse, there's a certain cost per square foot to add an additional $4 per square foot, and we're not talking 100 square foot greenhouse. You can't grow much there. So we're talking multiple thousands
That
of
one's
square
$175,000.
feet times $4.
Right, so
A lot of money.
Yeah, mine was like $300,000. Well, if I retrofitted, but it wasn't.
So, and the lights pretty much need to be on. Are they on 24 hours? Are they on?
No, long day is 14 hours. 14 hours and 1 minute. Which would be another question I would have with you leave greenhouse in there. Like, as the days get shorter, like you can't manipulate it by 1 minute. We can play music until 10 o'clock at night.
That's kind of what I was
Can we keep
thinking.
our lights on
because
till 10?
we hear music from surrounding venues.
I think you're gonna get a lot of pushback to get up to that 14-hour.
Is there a desire to go longer than 14?
Ask 100 different growers, and they're gonna tell you 100 different answers.
Uh-huh.
Right? There's
Sure.
a reason that in the summer you don't see the lights, 'cause you get 14 hours anyway.
So that's the magic numbers, about 14 hours.
It's coming
So-
in 2 weeks.
And then in the mornings, do they come on early? Can they come on early rather than stay on late? I mean, we can get that 14 hours.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what everybody else
But-
has negotiated with Duke, but there's like on-peak, off-peak hours. So
That makes sense.
if it's a certain time of the year, it might be an off-peak hour, and then you'd run it in the morning. You don't care if it's in the morning or the evening. You can even do a night. That's
Just do a break, so it would be off at a certain point and back on.
correct.
I think the question of the dark skies, and most people are out enjoying the sky. But, and again, You know, we've got music till 10, sometimes music till 9, other times. We get those 14 hours, and I don't think that we need to be necessarily directing how someone does business. I don't know.
Make it unattractive for new greenhouses to come here. That's, to me, that's the question for
And
that.
I don't think we want to do that.
We could do that. Somebody who gets to listen to the live music and watch the lights all night.
It's even closer
Especially
for
across
you.
the street.
Yeah.
I'm an anomaly. I don't care. Most people really care. But that's really-
I was just wondering, Michael, it's not, have you had the committee or any complaints about the lights, like the large greenhouse was, the bright lights? I don't think they've been on late, but did you get any complaints like that?
No, I think when the lakeside lighting stuff was going on, I don't know if I was here yet for that. The,
It's not
Yeah.
in town, but there were a lot of comments on social media, I can tell you. About
Please, 2 acres. Probably, I'm sorry, 17 was outside.
Yeah.
the only complaints I've received are about residences adjacent to a commercial property. Usually that has wall pack lighting or floodlights that are shining straight out with no shielding.
We do have room, I'm going to James's, we have room, for example, across from you. We'll have room. You've got room for the same size greenhouse out of the floodplain. The other side of Bald Rock, you've got room for other use on there. I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen. That's the ideal topography, amenities, great for tax purposes. Open farmland. You think those could be 15 acres or more each right there? Yeah. That's lakeside. That's why I think you were asking community, no one's breathing down our neck to put in lakeside greenhouse inside the town limits, but the minute that they are. That's cool. You're gonna get them up. Just think it needs to, right now, that those complaints are going no, they could get totally up. Saying it'd be nice to have something, right now, if you leave it alone, then that's it. It overrides it. Again, I'm gonna allow that. Not an easy conversation.
Conversation.
I didn't mean
And
to
I
talk
agree.
both sides
No,
of my mouth. It's not an easy conversation.
There's other, there's yeah.
But-
Lots of different use.
It's a conversation we need to have, you know.
Don't
now.
disagree. It's a meeting all through its own. If you wanna make it this meeting, that's fine with me. I don't think we're informed enough about the operations of the structure itself. You give too much advice, is my thought. Rather have a couple of people who do this for, be invited as guests to speak to us, educate us before we go. Magic wand. Would like to talk about other stuff.
Feel free. Love to hear your
The
input.
group here. I'm not running the show. I just would, not an official movement here, but I say you table the greenhouse conversation. Till somebody comes in and educates us. Our own people.
Yeah.
That would
I
be my
agree.
advice.
So if we took the greenhouse section out of what we would put forward, what is left really to put this in a form that could go forward to council?
Like what items are left to address. I think the single family residential is probably a big one. You know, and again, there's some examples in those ordinances we looked at last month. Do you want to have lighting control or even just some type of the ordinance apply to single family residential? Detached homes? And do you want there to be fixture details? I think one of the ordinances even had a definition of floodlights that complied with different angles of them. And then I believe one other item we talked about is we have the requirement for 1 foot candle at a property line But I think Mr. Foster brought up at the last meeting, if you live next to someone and they're both single-family residential properties, and if your neighbor has a light on the side of their home that's shining directly in your window, do you want the town to be able to enforce something around that?
Yes. All of what you were talking about, I just, think we need to cover single family homes also and specify what they can do. And one other thing that's mentioned several times here, why are we concentrating on this 50% thing? When, if they have a lighting, yes, it's grandfathered in. But I would say if you replace anything, it needs to come up to whatever standards we establish.
I think for, especially single family homes, outdoor lighting, the typical Duke installed light is going to be LEDs and they're cut off. They shine down. It's not like when I was growing up, we had this big light in our yard and it shined everywhere. It just lit up the world. That was mercury vapor or sodium vapor,
Yeah.
mercury, high pressure sodium or mercury vapor, sorry. You don't get those anymore. If you call Duke, say, I want an outdoor light, it's gonna be LEDs. And that's not just to save you money, it's to save power bill.
I agree,
So
but
I think-
what I'm talking about is add-ons.
I think if someone goes to Lowe's and buys a floodlight, points it at their neighbor, I don't know that the town, I don't know. That's one of those, another one of those sticky situations where town then becomes light police, although. What's that?
That's what we're doing now.
We are, and we're, in my opinion, I think we're doing it based on not just the individual resident that goes and buys a light and puts it up. Hopefully, well, okay, we've all had a neighbor that would put up a light just to shine in our window because I made them mad. But is that a town? I don't know, is that,
I don't know that I wanna be putting my hand up to go for policy to encourage somebody to be a courteous neighbor. Something.
right,
I wanna look at the businesses that would have lights on and shine at 360 degrees every direction, 24 hours a day. And see if we didn't stop.
and if all we took care of was that, we've made progress, probably just as well.
How's mine?
Is that me? How about that?
Check it. Text.
Do I need to repeat? Tell me what was clever and I'll repeat that. So, yes, I agree with Mr. Roth.
But several people seem to think that that's,
And that's
I don't mean to.
true,
shut that
and we're
off.
not trying to shut that off, but
I'm just want to make sure we discuss it.
sure.
That's why I'm coming from.
It's not enforceable. I'll tell you, it's not. We have all sorts of stuff we'd like to enforce.
It'd be just like enforcing the
Weeds there.
noise ordinance.
Say it again.
Be same as enforcing the noise ordinance.
So we're gonna call the police at 11 o'clock at night for the light bulb?
Well, no.
No, we haven't. Enforced it first. I feel the bigger impact is the commercial, it's the non-residential, it's the multifamily, it's the public areas of the new developments, major or minor growth added. I feel that. I personally am in favor of grandfathering into single family residence.
And I think that the outdoor lighting for single family residences that comes from Duke will take care of.
Yes, I agree.
Freestanding stuff, the stuff not attached to the house, I totally.
Yeah,
that-
Duke,
That we could.
the ones Duke put in, like you said,
It's not-
I'm talking about the one that goes to Lowe's and mounts on the side of the house.
Lighting that wouldn't, do, like, the rest. Should be.
At least that you're on the edge of saying something. Where there is cut off. Residential line. How do you do that? Like, so my property, that's the only one I'm. So I've got 13 acres. I've got a large footprint of a house. I've got floodlights going out, to goats, donkeys. I've got them going, I've got floodlights going out every. Come to me and tell me where you want my lights, I'm not.
Well, that's on your property. That's exactly,
That's my
that's
house,
fine, yeah.
Right.
But if I live just past the 13 acres and you put up a big floodlight over there that's shining,
I promise to go next to Lance and look 500 feet over at my house, that light would look like. It's an LED bulb.
no,
I just, I feel like Maine, we're in crunch.
So a townhome
Multi-family in here.
that is individually owned, but I share a wall with someone, those property lines get really, would that be? We don't want to have to worry about each town, light's gonna pollute from one, how is that handled?
That's typically gonna be restricted covenants internal developer.
That I don't know. I mean, the main purpose of this would be addressing it at the point of construction. So again, with like the townhomes off Jeffers, it would be whatever wall units they install on the front of each townhome, those would have to be applicable, and in their plans they submit to me, they would need a fixture detail showing what that's going to be. But I don't think it's realistic that if that someone buys that, well, actually, those are all for rent, so that's a bad example. But let's say they're for purchase, someone buys the townhome and goes to Lowe's and says, no, I like this better, and they attach it to the front. I don't think there's, again, with two planning staff, I don't think there's any realistic way for us to enforce that.
We're adjusting the parking lot. Same trails. Not a front porch.
Not with, well, not if it's replaced in multifamily. At the time of construction, we can require a lot from the developer.
We're not drilling down that. Individual.
Well, again, I think there will be wall lights installed on every unit at the time they're constructed, and we can control that through the developer. But if it's ever replaced by an individual owner, that's going to be very difficult.
But there will probably be an association,
Obnoxious and intrusive inside the restricted.
that would be over that, so it is addressed,
It's
okay,
just comments, not gonna be forcible by the town.
but it would be enforceable by that association.
Most of the homes in this, excluding High Vista, most homes in Mills River are not.
I was talking about multi-family.
Right. So most, we don't have a lot. Very good point.
So.
Commercial,
So are we gonna include single family or not? It was that.
Well, let's talk. Do we have a consensus? What do y'all think? Ms. Marina, what do you think?
I would have to agree that it is unrealistic for the town to be enforcing measures of lighting on someone's single family home. So I would not be in favor of including them outside of, the developments and the lighting that is put in at the time of development.
Mr. Kinsey, what you think? Yeah, that's fine. We've still got some talking to do. Mr. Foster,
well,
I agree, it's a concern.
I was just bringing it up for
Sure.
discussion. I just don't, like I said, I don't want to come back later. So why didn't y'all discuss this? We discussed it.
It may be more of a legal question. Could that be considered a nuisance if someone is shining lights on another property? Is that?
I would agree with that, yeah, because it is a nuisance.
Is that something that is addressed somewhere else?
No. So and again, that gets into, I guess this text amendment. Right now, I think I went as far as, oh, I do have it labeled administration and enforcement, but if you wanted to define light trespass to a certain extent as a nuisance, we would need enforcement provisions, just like we do for any other land use violation, which would be fines, letters, et cetera.
What about within the county though? Like, I think what if there's like a nuisance ordinance that would apply, that would be enforceable by the sheriff's office versus the town.
That's similar to like what we do with the noise ordinances. So, yeah, we have an interlocal agreement that if the sheriff gets a call for a noise complaint after hours, they will work with the town to basically handle enforcement. Now, if it's someone blasting music at their house, usually that's just handled by the officers. But if it's Bold Rock playing till 11 p.m., usually that's when we're brought in to handle it. So again, if the planning board wanted to go down that route, we would probably have to have a conversation with the sheriff's office to see if they would be even amenable to taking that on.
Lisa, how I took that was, in absence of an ordinance here, is the county gonna enforce something on their own?
Right, yeah,
Think so.
I was wondering more, yeah, if there was something more broadly that Henderson,
Precedent set for that already? The county will?
in terms of under some sort of nuisance law. Which again, I think it sounds like we're talking about a situation where someone is, intentionally using a strobe light against their neighbor in a way to be, yes, yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, I feel like it sounds like it's kind of gotten out of a neighborly situation and is something more heightened between two parties. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Right.
war over there in Gulf neighborhoods.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I'm just, yeah, if we're gonna do a lot of things, I like to see it done with, any kind of disturbance, but not really know how far we want to go. Well, but
And
Well, I guess it depends what the overall objective is, because, we're gearing toward a dark sky objective. That should include, I'm not big on that, that should include light, all light, right? Or if we're just saying, no, we don't want to make it difficult to do business in the middle of the river, we just need to make sure that every business uses light, use their lights fashion that works for their business. But so there's two different things. So which path of take?
Good points.
And it sounds like it's a path, because we don't
Sounds
want to
like
make it
it's-
difficult. This, I mean, the lights, I this. The lights from the greenhouse, I'm having that point. And they're necessary for that business. Possibly if we talk about create a screen, why would we have other? I just think we have to go more dark sky with just saying, operate the lights as you for this, as little pollution, light pollution around it.
So I think we're talking about a darker sky,
Well,
rather than a dark sky.
yeah,
We know where we want to get.
well, I think
But
that's
we've
what
got
I'm
to
here, so
accept.
minimize adverse, offsite impact of lighting such as like trespass and intrusive light. That's my second point. The second point here was our first point, to curtail light pollution, reduce sky glow and preserve the dark sky night environment. That sound like we're all in favor of that, because that really impacts some businesses negative.
Michael, what were the towns you used for examples? Hendersonville, Black Mountain? Is that one of them?
yeah, Hendersonville, Black Mountain, Brevard, Asheville, and then we also looked at Buncombe's ordinance. And so I went through all of them and borrowed here and there.
So greenhouse, I don't know if the single greenhouse
No,
municipality uses address.
No, and that was correct. And again, I think that's one thing I talked about at the last meeting is that Mills River's unique because under state law, other municipal jurisdictions have to exempt agriculture, but only in their extraterritorial zoning area outside, ETJs outside of their town limits. Municipalities can regulate agriculture in their town limits, but again, because of this town's history, we're unique in that we exempt agriculture totally within our town limits.
We are unique, and I know James had to cut out for something, I didn't get to hear some guests we had in our land preservation. We had some guests in as far as Speedway Marina, several counties away, and they were just blown away at your town, they were doing. Ag park. So right then. Caution everybody. Careful.
And they're coming back. Some of them are.
What's your opinion?
Well,
Your question, folks.
if, let's say that a business helps by 50 or adds 50%, but doesn't adjust the lighting, is that really a trigger?
What do you,
If
what do
they
you mean,
build-
doesn't adjust for lighting on the?
Okay,
retrofit part of it,
let's
the new
say,
part?
let's say that they have a parking lot's non-conforming. The business is 3,000 square feet. They add another 10,000 square feet. Now they've up to about 50%, but they're not changing parking lot lighting.
They're smart, but pick 1 square foot.
Sure. The question about a greenhouse adding 50%, but not lighting that 50%, I agree, that's a pretty big ask to make them go back and retrofit when they're not really changing, right? They're not changing the light that they're creating. I mean,
Specific to greenhouses, you could run them out of town. They needed to double, try his tell went from 2 to 4. 2 to 4. And they're on 40 acres. 10% of that property. Out there. If they couldn't have doubled that facility because of this.
Right.
Not so.
that's right. So,
Where's the draft doesn't include the green.
so, right, but even
This
a bit,
this question, yeah.
my question, so yes, that's that concern, but let's say it's another facility.
Gas station. A lot of outdoor lighting.
Gas station, that's all. Sure, let's say it's not a gas station, let's say it's a factory. Right now it's 20,000 square feet, they come in, they make 30,000 square feet, but they're not changing the size of the parking lot. They're not changing the lit portion of the parking lot.
Specific to a structure or component improvement.
I think you're saying it'd be more practical to just add on the existing lights.
If they are
That's sort of
changing
not
the
different.
existing, yeah, if they are increasing the number of lights by 50%, then they should all go.
Yeah.
Performance. Does that make sense? A way to write it? So we're not tying it to the size of the building, we're tying it to the amount of light. The fixtures.
Isn't that, so that's that's already in here as section 1. It sounds like we're really addressing what's in section 2.
What page?
Sorry, it's F. So I guess that's
Lots of
technically, it's a page 4, at the very top of page 4.
Line 80.
This is the section that addresses the 50% rule. So
So-
so
That covers, yes, ma'am.
yeah, so number 1 ties it to changing the light
The light.
fixtures. Number 2 was the one that's if you're just expanding by 50%. This seems to be where people are having some, this is the one
So-
that maybe we want to modify or eliminate.
So if that were eliminated, would that be acceptable? Would that be a solution? Would that?
Eliminate number 2.
So leaving lights or parking.
Why a 12-month period? I don't know. That was arbitrary. Whatever.
People did.
And that kind of makes sense, otherwise you could add
Right.
20% this month, 20, It's not uncommon to have a period involved. If you add more development within that period, it's considered that whole development.
They can pull permit 20%, another one, 20%,
Right,
another one,
right.
10, circumvent us.
Certainly. So that's why it's the.
Depending on structure. Well, it's school.
Yeah. I
Would you
think
extend that then, 12 months? Keep that,
24-month period. But as the older lights age out that aren't getting replaced, where are they going back with? Hopefully they're going back with conforming
How about this was
because it's hard to get fixtures that don't. I mean, if we're talking parking lot lighting, that's what's out there is the full cutoff. There's not pretty special order things. But you call Duke and you ask for an outside light, it's gonna be cut off. It's gonna shine down. They replace 10 of the 50 lights. They replace 25 of the 50 lights. We want to make them do all 50 now.
storage unit down Boylston, did they submit, I know they submitted pretty in-depth. They haven't submitted private plan. I know it wasn't required. Curious if
No.
you need light.
They didn't have to at that point.
The recently approved one at the county border, well, no. It was something I discussed with people because as I've heard complaints about it, specifically with storage facilities, because security is a concern. It's something I asked of the applicant, but I can't force them to do anything about that. To either have, cut off fixtures or to have some type of shielding.
A lot of wall mount.
Mhm.
That structure.
Mhm.
They don't turn those on.
I have a question right here, but on the greenhouse. You guys on the greenhouse here, so there's 14 hours of light that you provide. Not provided naturally, the lights provide, but then they're cut off, so they go on, they're having. They're not on.
I mean, that's why I was saying, you ask 100 growers, you're gonna get 100 different responses, because you might get somebody who says, I think I get better tonnage if I do like 16 hours. Just the scientific cutoff is 14.
So when we see, if I can ask a question, when we see the light agreements, it's light that is shined down and then reflected back up. Is that
Correct.
correct? Because it doesn't make sense to have unshielded lights. I mean, like these are shielded, they're shining down pretty much. It doesn't make sense to just have a fluorescent with no upper shield.
No,
You need a reflector.
they all have like a, mirror up, although yeah, I think you're seeing a lot of it that's coming.
At the sides.
Most of it has some top and shade in.
Can you tell me about the pink lights that they're using over there? I mean, I see them at my front door, but I don't know anything about it. You don't need. Oh, hollow, is it hollow or hollow? Oh, hollow. Okay. They're on Schoolhouse pavement, right? They're using the pink lights. So I was just curious, if James is familiar, is there some type of.
Something in the
efficiency
spectrum
that's,
that it does, yeah.
You know.
Do
not
LEDs
unpleasant to
work?
look at, Then again, I don't mind.
I have to ask you this later, because I wonder if LEDs are. I guess I just asked.
Growing lights?
Yeah. That's tough. That's more energy you have to pay for. And you don't want to use more energy than you absolutely have to. There's a break even to
Right.
make it work.
You just can't do this enough to get your product on time.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards just let's exempt greenhouses
Yeah,
for now.
going on.
Cause it's-
40 or 60,000.
Yeah.
I think it was, actually made a good point. I'd rather they come on at 2:00 in the morning, and start the 14 hours. I don't see people sitting out on their porch at 3 in the morning, but they're sitting out there at 9:30 at night. mean, is that feasible for?
Can I talk out both sides of my mouth too?
Absolutely.
Oh, I say you have to, it's a discussion. You have to.
I've toured some places that like a hemp place. And you will want a light ordinance, because that is unbelievably bright.
Thankfully, this one over here is self. Canadian bank that owned it has those.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's.
Takes a lot of light to grow hemp.
Is,
Around here, it's not that bright. You know, everybody has one, everybody has high intensity. 600 watts, not. There's a whole nother level of. Like,
the height of the lens has to get down, drove it all the way because of the sheer height.
Router than one on Latson Road, that's it, yeah.
They were keeping theirs on. I don't know if they were rotating because of the amount of energy coming into the building. They're weren't going. Maybe they were shifting one. Or something. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what the new owner is from.
Would it be reasonable to propose a standard of the amount of light that was being produced, that was exiting the property for a greenhouse? So that would, because that is a scary thought, then if someone comes in and grows hemp or another type of plant that uses a lot of light, we're talking a much bigger impact than we would other greenhouses. All right. It's too late.
One
Once
could use
it's
some more
here.
education there, but yeah.
We could, yeah, we should see what we can.
Research that, see if there's. Amount of light.
Enough to grow tomatoes, not him.
And we don't necessarily want to
I like
exclude,
tomatoes, man.
and, you know, hemp
Well,
has its use.
Yeah, one the over extreme, you know.
The 1 foot candle at a property line, and again, that's more about a residence being next to a gas station. That's what the other ordinances or some of the example ordinances establish. Some of them go higher though. I think Buncombe County's was a little more lenient and went up to 2.
I would like to ask a question about something unrelated to any of the issues we've discussed so far tonight. Which is, it's still on page 4. Everyone's still on page 4, but on section G, that identifies, the 4 types of lighting that is prohibited. I just wondered if we wanted to make this applicable townwide, because because the beginning of the ordinance states that it only applies to, you know, businesses and non-residential, et cetera. I don't know how much of an issue it is that like that an individual would be using a laser light or lighting that mimics a traffic control device, but it seems like the prohibited lighting is lighting that should be maybe
Townwide.
townwide, applicable to anybody, not just to the specific entities that we pointed out in the beginning. So that's just, you know, a question, something I put out there as question if we want to.
That's a great point. Laser light is a pilot. I know I mentioned this last time, but it's a pilot lasers are deadly.
Yep.
And the blind, the dazzling of the eyes, we read about, I get magazines,
Well,
pilot magazines, about how that causes issues, and that's against the law.
laser lights already covered in the FAA regulation, aren't
They
they?
are.
Yeah.
But, where we can make a point that
Yeah,
lasers
I agree.
aren't good. I mean,
Bring it on
they're
down
great
to a
for-
local level.
For a lot of things, lasers are awesome, but don't shine it at anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's,
I like that one.
I like that.
Added to general.
Right, well, again, I think it's only because at the very beginning, it says that this is applicable to only, so it sounds, yeah, no, it just sounds like we might need to say, say, just make this more broadly applicable. Um, you know, but I think that makes sense. That's all, just to make sure it's clear that it's not,
Vague, Mr. Foster, but high intensity lights, especially those direct help you.
in the single family home situation.
Any lighting or light
It's
fixture
broad,
or
broad, it's
upward
the whole
Yeah.
town, right?
Right.
Yeah, make it,
It's up to percent.
traffic control devices, that's also that's prohibited by state law. But again, I think it's a good idea to mention it. Okay, are we ready to, we're not ready to move this forward. I don't feel like we are. I think we need some more discussion. I do feel
I'd
like,
say on that, I think you're absolutely right. We don't want to go there and ask town council to do our legwork for us. Don't want to go there with, this is part A, we're asking you to approve that labor part. Maybe.
no, I think.
Looking at this, I think that's a great point. Look at that, and I think at first blush, all we had, and I read it before I got here, the discussion how preliminary it was. So I think you get it right. Pick the parts that we have more questions about, learn about, and put it down, we'll get back together and be ready to.
Including the
put
greenhouse
something together.
conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And again, when it comes to, I don't know. I feel like, I already have a thought.
Well, I think what Jim said, it's one thing to have a thought, it's another to say another thing, have a conversation.
Yeah, no, I think you have to have a conversation, and then so, but again, that's where I go into the very first section there, number 1 and number 2. What are we doing? Are we just looking to minimize adverse impacts of lighting, such as light fast, light, or curtail light pollution, reduce sky mode, because I don't think so. I think there are times like, not a complete conflict, of course, with all light emitted. But if I own a greenhouse, I wouldn't want number 2 in there, because it's this body changes or the council changes. At some point in the future, if number 2's in there, they're gonna say, well, hey, new greenhouses don't really follow the number 2. Those are things that's my point, is I would more look at it further before we got back together and discuss that.
Yeah.
Because I think we're focused on number 1. I don't think we're really addressing number 2.
As it stands, just a reminder that ag wouldn't be helping anything unless we have to add this.
Specifically add, curtail. Could that be changed to minimize light?
Those are not synonyms.
And I'm not trying to pick on semantics, I'm just saying, it seems like we're.
Well,
Yeah.
curtail, does that mean stop?
I think it means limit.
Limit?
I think it
I don't
does.
know, when I was a young boy, my dad said, I need to curtail. I didn't word. Use that word in spot.
Okay.
Reduce in extent or quantity.
So we got
Okay, so that's.
one for my thesaurus.
So, like I mentioned, it kind of a jest, it's a darker skies ordinance at this point.
Yeah.
Because we have to realize there's some things we can't really address being totally dark. There's gonna be things out there.
Well, I know you said this last time and maybe you say it at every meeting, but it would be something that the public and the
Yes.
businesses here, to the extent
Well-
that this is an issue that they have an opinion or would like to have us consider, opinion or information, it sounds like it's something that we would benefit from. So,
Totally agree.
getting opinion, and again, from both the greenhouse business owners, because I thought that was a really great point that, we actually might have it really good right now in terms of where the lighting is with the types of facilities that are presently here. But if we don't address them and then in 4 years, someone comes and does the like crazy, I think that probably universally the town would not want it to be a different situation, a much brighter situation that we already have. So it does seem like we would benefit from a lot of public input here.
I
I
agree.
would want to reduce this to a specific area, to a corridor. Those are gonna be, those zoning that allows for it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna get pushed back away from something.
Right.
And we need to be.
Yes.
Would there be a proper way to do what Lisa is suggesting? I know we have public hearings on everything when it gets to that point, but would there be a proper way to advertise or invite the public to come in and talk with us, just like James is doing tonight?
We could put out a Facebook post. I mean, I
Yeah.
could put something on the
Sure.
website.
That'd be a good place.
Yeah.
Is there a way to,
Put it in the Mills River social page thing on Facebook.
Share thing.
with, it's too late for tax bills, put in a note in the tax bill? That may not be when we won't comment anyway.
Look, that's always gonna be a
Right.
challenge, even when we put out massive requests for the park, where we have 200 people,
I don't,
You replied, yeah.
196. That's always gonna be a challenge.
That's-
They know they know the town council meets every,
Yeah, people tend to,
ones that show up get to make this.
they'll show up after the fact.
I encourage.
Okay, well, I think we talked about enough for tonight about it. Let's
I agree.
continue this. Do we have a time limit?
no.
So
I'm
we-
okay with it, can I?
Yes. Before you do, I do want to say
Is
it's a
it what you
great
need?
job so far.
Yeah.
Please don't take
Yeah.
any
No.
questions or saying.
No, this is just a rough draft.
I think what you put together is fantastic and helps us to better understand once we do discuss it. And the initial plan, no plan survives initial contact with the enemy, and send an enemy here, but, anything, you always need to be willing to sketch, so,
And if I may, do you mind if I just summarize what I've heard tonight
sure.
and just make sure everyone's okay with that? So I know the discussion's still on the table, but for now, I'm gonna strike line 20 through 22 about the greenhouses until there's further clarification on that. To Miss Marino's point, I'm going to add in a line under applicability that prohibited lighting applies townwide. I have not heard definitive direction on single family homes, so I'm not gonna address that currently. I am going to modify the stream buffer to include safety lighting for pedestrian passive recreational facilities. And then, yeah, so was it just number 2 or was it also 86 and 87?
Yeah.
I think that other lighted area is, makes it okay, makes number 3 okay.
Okay, about the parking lot. Got it.
Here,
Mhm. That's all I got.
Sounds good. Rick.
So I'll make those changes and then I'll probably have additional text for you next time, like definitions, probably a section of the subdivision code referencing this, et cetera.
Excellent. we will move on then to, new business. Seeing if there is none, does anyone have additional items or board comments? All right, staff update.
Real brief tonight, so at one of the last council meetings, where council approved conditional zoning, they also directed me to begin drafting a text amendment to modify basically the application process for some of our special development types like townhomes specifically. So I was working on a special use permit text amendment, which would basically clean up some of the processes in the special use permit process. But as part of that, I'm gonna wrap this in because again, council basically desires that now that conditional zoning is legally in place, that we direct those more high impact development types through that process without leaving a window open for basically two processes to exist, special use permit and conditional zoning. So that's something I'm gonna wrap into the special use permit text amendment, and hopefully I'll have that to you at a upcoming meeting. The Board of Adjustment next Tuesday is hearing a minor special use permit application on a proposed shopping center, Penland Road and Emma Sharp Road, just north of the Bojangles. So that's going on, but that's all I have for you tonight. An update.
Thank you so much. And with that said, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Thank you all for your input.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I.
Aye.